Hello and welcome. This is Tim Santoni with Background Screening Tips and Tech. Today we have a very special guest, Bruce Berg. Berg Consulting Group is joining us, coming to us from Florida today. Bruce, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Glad to be here, Tim.
Well, Bruce has been in the industry. He is an expert and been in the industry for over 30 years. He was a founding member of PBSA, formerly known as NAPBS. He's successfully scaled, grown, and had his companies acquired. One was acquired by First Advantage, which he stayed on and helped to grow. I was just reading online that Berg Consulting Group is celebrating its 20th year in business. Berg Consulting Group has expertise in helping CRAs, improve processes, deal with M&A issues, generally just positioning and helping them take it to the next level. But Bruce, I'll let you introduce, your company and what you guys do and kind of, from your perspective, what an ideal client looks like, and then we can get into some conversation.
Sure. Great. Primarily we work with CRAs, background screening companies, either employment screening or tenant screening. We work with the wholesalers in the industry, and we also work with some of the people that have integrations with background screening companies. But our goal is to help background screening companies do a better job and thrive in sometimes a tough environment, and sometimes a very good environment. Right now, it's turning from very tough to very good. And we help them by helping them reduce their costs of obtaining data. We help them by growing through better sales and marketing. And we also provide some services in terms of sourcing for employment verifications and education verifications. In addition, we are the #1 intermediary for mergers and acquisitions in the industry. So that's how, after I left my company, who I sold back in 1998 and left there in 2000, I got into doing M&A work at the request of a couple of screening companies that wanted me to sell their company for them. And so we've done over 7 dozen deals in the industry. We are the experts in M&A, and again, we help people who want to get in the industry to get in, whether it's a startup or buying in. We help private equity firms that want to get in the industry or add additional screening companies to their existing portfolio. Or, we work with the CRAs if they come to us and they say, look, it's time for us to sell. We want to sell because we either have a partnership issue, it's time for a divorce, it's time for us to retire. Or, gee, I think the market's going to turn sour, and I think it's time for me to sell. Or most recently it was, well, the market turned very sour last year, and now it's looking like it's coming back to be refreshed, and we want to be in line. It's time for us to exit. So we're here, and again, we've got a great reputation in terms of helping people make deals happen to everybody's satisfaction.
Yeah, and I've had firsthand knowledge of working with Bruce and his team on the M&A side, and they definitely know their stuff, very well respected. If you're interested in learning more about what they do, you can find that at bergconsultinggroup.com, where they have all their solutions as well as their M&A activity and the people that they're representing that are looking for or looking to sell or buy on the background screening side. So it's great resource. So Bruce, you have extensive experience in kind of the M&A side of the business. I mean, what, in your opinion, is the #1 myth that people have when they're looking at potentially selling or exiting their screening business?
Well, the #1 myth is that they think the company's worth more than what it really is. We've been down this road many, many, many times, and we know what the company will bring, and we know what it's worth. Again, it's pretty simple way to figure that out. We help the seller determine what a real value is. Matter of fact, before we take on a client to sell them, we charge them for a business valuation, because we need to come to a meeting of the minds in terms of what the company's worth before we go out to market. It's not necessarily the minimum price. We always try to get the maximum for the seller, but want something that's realistic that everybody can agree on so that we can get the deal done. The other thing that we find is that so many CRAs have not taken good care of their books over the years. They've got things mixed together. They have a lot of personal expenses on their expense report, and those can be pulled out. But it's all becomes the more funny things you have in there, the more a buyer looks at the income statement as being maybe less than totally reliable. So, when we work with a lot of clients, we may work with them for a year or two before they actually sell by talking about how their income statement is set up and how their costs are set up. And then we also work with them, let's get your costs down and get your profits up, because your sales price is going to be based on profits, how much profit you're making. So if you can pull a couple $100,000 out of your cost structure over the next couple of years, and you're going to receive 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 multiple on your earnings. If you have $200,000, even times the 4 multiples, another $800,000 in your pocket. So it's very important to, keep your costs in line, get your costs in line before you want to sell. We help companies with that all the way down the line.
Yeah, it's a good point, Bruce. So obviously, your experience is that the background screening companies are selling at multiples of earnings, and what kind of is driving that? I mean, there's technology implications, customer base. There's a lot of factors in there. But what are you seeing as the key things that that a buyer is looking for, where value is increased or multiples are increased? Based on the type of business it is.
Well, every buyer is different. So if a buyer is not in the industry, they would be willing to pay a little more because they need the technology that comes with that seller, or they may need the management that comes with that seller. If it's a strategic account, they're already in the industry that's buying the background screening company, they may not want anything to do with any of the overhead, including the current management. They just want the accounts. So it all depends. A lot of companies we sell have technology they built themselves, but frankly, it's not as good as the buyer's technology. And frankly, it's not even as good as some of the third-party platforms that are out there. And they think it's worth a lot of money because they maybe invested $1 million or $1.5 million in their technology, but it really doesn't provide any added value unless they're selling to someone who's just getting into the market. And those people are afraid of that technology because now they have to manage it. And so often these technologies are built by third parties in Yugoslavia or Ukraine or China or someplace. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it has to be managed, and that becomes an extra burden for a buyer if they're not careful. So again, the way to maximize value in a CRA is to work with us to make sure that we look at every item on your income statement. We look at your cost down to what it costs you to do a county criminal search in Cook County, Illinois, and find a vendor that's going to give you the maximum margin so that you can maximize the value of your company.
Makes a lot of sense. So in many cases, someone looking to exit, they want to come to you 2, 3, 4, 5 years before to just kind of do a checkup, get things in line, because it's going to take a time. It's going to be a process.
That's what we recommend. Now, that doesn't always happen. We get plenty of calls from people who say, "Look, I'm tired. I'm done, or gee, I just got a report from my doctor, and he says if I don't stop working, I'm going to spill over tomorrow, and I need to get this sold." Or we get a call from somebody who says, "Look, I bought this background screening company 2 years ago, and it was making $1 million then, and since that time, I'm losing $1 million a year. I want out. Just get me out as fast as possible." And so we just pick it up from where that is and go with it.
Gotcha. So I know that you guys focus a lot on efficiencies with the CRAs from a cost perspective. And I guess I would be interested to hear your take on this, right? There's this kind of, I don't know if there's inherently there's this goal to minimize costs, both internally as well as to price and be competitive. At what point do we hit kind of the bottom? At some point it kind of a unique product or whatever, but that, the costs are the cost, but the value that the CRA brings is the service, the compliance, the platform, the experience, whatever else. It's not just the data back and forth. So, what's your take on that, in terms of decreasing the cost, which is important to make margins, but not decreasing your overall price and still, conveying the fact that you bring value?
Well, again, the key thing here is you don't want to sacrifice quality for cost. The cost is equal amongst quality, but you have to have the quality first. To pay 50 cents for something per unit and you're not getting anything that's of any value, you're just leaving yourself open to lawsuits, which are going to cost you a whole lot more money, and that doesn't make any sense. So, but again, there's no reason why you can't get equal quality, sometimes better quality, at a lower price from someone that's been able to negotiate a better price for you because of whatever relationships they've had in the past with the particular vendors that they're bringing to you.
Gotcha.
So it's a combination of things.
Yep, definitely. And pre-COVID, I know that we were in pretty good economic times and conversations and reviews. Obviously, you're very up to date on what's going on in terms of acquisitions and mergers. And my guess is that a lot of that shut down. Now, as things kind of open back up in terms of business, is kind of, I say business as unusual, right? We're back to business, but it's different than it was. There's a lot of factors that impact that. But in terms of, industry overall, what are you hearing from the people you work with and talk to? What's kind of the 2021, outlook?
Well, the feedback I'm getting is everybody's very excited. I mean, people are starting to go back to work. Businesses are opening up. And people are going out into the world. They want to go. I mean, the airlines are full. We read about that in the paper. The cruise lines are saying, look, we need to open up again. People start moving, go back to work. They, all the other businesses that are depending on those people going to work, serving lunches or whatever it may be, they have to bring more people back to work. And people working is what makes our industry hum. Yep. So frankly, and then we're looking at a $2 billion infrastructure package that Biden has introduced. And yes, we need infrastructure done for sure. Another $2 billion stimulus is going to really push businesses to grow. And if they're growing, then the labor force gets tighter. When the labor force gets tighter, there's more people moving around in the labor force. And if there's more people moving around, there's more background checks being done. The negative, of course, is going to be there's going to be a significant tax increase on corporations, which is going to slow things down from investment on their part. But if there's a $2 billion push on the other side, that's going to offset that somewhat. So I think people in the industry are very positive. And yes, there is some price pressure at the top, and it's get a little more competitive every year. It's been that way for 20 years at least. And on the bottom end, in terms of your cost, I mean, those continue to be reduced, and not only in terms of data acquisition, but also in terms of cost to do things. Particularly if a lot of companies are eliminating their physical space. We're going to work remote from now on. I don't have to have physical space. My people don't have to. They work full 8 hours. They don't have to travel a half hour each way to work. They're more productive, and we're more productive. We've been able to manage through that very nicely. Thank you. And we're not going to go away from that. I mean, before COVID, we market a company called the Background Warehouse, which does employment verifications. And those are done by people picking up the phone and calling past employers. And the question from our clients was, are they on site or are they off site? We don't want anybody working off site. Well, that's gone. I mean, that's a myth that's been destroyed, because people can do it, and you can do it securely, and you can do it efficiently. Sure. So very upbeat. Everybody's upbeat.
Gotcha. So I want to run something by you, Bruce. So one thing, in talking to on a prior podcast, I interviewed someone in the recruiting and staffing, and they do a lot of business level positions. So not manufacturing, not construction, but office positions, administrative, secretarial, the management type positions. She said 75% of those jobs are now remote, like you mentioned, right? This is the new normal. So as a background screening company that provides background checks to those service-based companies, now you have people working remote, so not interacting with other employees, they're not interacting with clients, they're not interacting with vendors and partners and suppliers. Do you think that there's going to be a shift in the risk perspective of employers when it comes to the background checks?
Not sure where you're going with that, Tim. Yes and no. They may be working from home, and therefore we may not have to worry about the fact that this person was a violent criminal, because they're not going to be able to hurt anybody in our office. But on the other hand, we don't know what their background is. We don't know if they embezzled, if they had theft. We don't know if they got fired from 3 jobs they were working remotely before, and they never worked a day there. They just collected their paycheck. So that's all part of a background check, and you need to do that. And social media checks are coming up and as more popular. I mean, they're done, quietly by the human resource departments today, but that's going to become part of services that screening companies offer more and more. And not only for pre-employment, but for continuously following what's going on, because the lawyers are out there and they're happy to sue any company who has an employee that does something that they shouldn't have done and the company should have known about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of my next thought, which is, I think that there's still inherent risk with people, whether they're working physically with staff or remote, right? What they've did, their culture, it's actually more impactful because you're having to trust them more to work on their own remotely without supervision, in some respect. But I think that you hit on the next point, which I think is super important, which is the shift towards more of the social media screening and monitoring of applicants before, during, and, in the course of employment. And I think that we're hearing a lot of chatter about the social media. We're kind of looking at all the different platforms and technology that are available and that are out there. And I think, like you said, now it's what is an employer should have known. And if they should have known and there's availability to check social media and they didn't, there's a risk there. And so I think that that's the next step. And not only that, but really a monitoring, whether it's criminal monitoring that's coming full circle, social media monitoring. There's an inherent need to mitigate risk by getting your arms around your employees and what they're up to, and not just doing a one and done. And, with technology and platforms now with rechecking and monitoring, the cost to do it has come down so far that I think it's a no-brainer. It's just a matter of background screeners selling it and positioning it properly in a way that makes sense for those employers. And it's another revenue stream in the sense for a CRA, right? It's something that needs to be out there.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Bruce, before we let you go, what other insights or things do you want to share about Berg Consulting Group? What projects you're working on, or anything that our listeners would be, can help you with?
Well, again, we're here as a service company. We're here to help you. We don't make any money unless we help you, and that's how we structure things. So, and we're open. If you have a question, call me, call Evan or call Abby. We'll do our best to answer it. If you want to get into, something more in depth, then we create a consulting agreement, and we'd like to get paid for our time. But again, initially, give us a call, talk about your issues, talk about what you want to do. And if we can help you, we'll tell you. And if we can't, we'll tell you that too. It's just what it's all about.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you. And I think that anyone should take them up on that, because I know that I've reached out and he's always taken my calls, returned my emails, and appreciate, all the insight. Also, if you want a really quick read, if you go to the website, bergconsultinggroup.com, there's Berg's Background Business Benchmarking Blue Book. It's a very easy PDF flip through. It seems super basic, but there's some really things that you've talked about and things that you haven't talked about that are in this book that talk about response times and different metrics and different things and way to run a CRA. And I think that at a basic level, it's something I refer to anyway on a regular basis. I think it's an excellent resource for a lot of people in the background screening business. And so check that out. Thanks again for tuning into Background Screening Tips and Tech. Bruce, thanks for joining the show. Again, you can pick up the podcast wherever you download your podcasts, and stay tuned as we have some other episodes lined up here in the future. Thanks.
Okay.